Following age-old rituals, Chinese sisters recite sutras in their Buddhist temple in Hong Kong back in the 50s. Many of them had crossed the border of communist China to escape violence. Here, in the British Crown colony, they could worship in freedom. They were part of the then 2 million refugees, often living under the most miserable circumstances, longing for a roof over their heads. Hong Kong consists of an island, 10 miles by 4, and, across the harbour, Kowloon, and beyond that, the New Territories, 300 miles of countryside stretching up to the border of China. The population had risen from half to 3 million people at the time, and their numbers increased daily. Rich Chinese, who fled from the regime on the mainland in 1948, invested their capital in new industries and trading firms. The Hong Kong government encouraged their enterprises with liberal trade policies. The resulting prosperity led to a self-supporting economy, with more work, food and shelter for the millions that made their residence here. The resulting prosperity led to a self-supporting economy, with more food, work and shelter for the millions that made their residence here. "150 years ago, Hong Kong was only a barren rock populated by not more than 5,000 fishermen and farmers. On land, fishermen burnt shipworm from their boats, whilst the women repaired the sails. They built their own small boats, called sampans, which were used not only for fishing, but serving also as a permanent dwelling place for their household and family. Up to this day, sampans are built according to the age-old model. Not less industrious were the farmers, who, by intensive labour, could barely make a living from the infertile soil. Rice, the staple diet of the southern Chinese, was the main crop. In the evenings, or in times of danger, they would withdraw behind the canal and walls of ancient villages for protection. The Portuguese, who appeared in this part of the world in the 16th century, attacked a pirate's nest on the peninsula of Macau nearby. The colony became the most important foreign settlement in the Far East. The old merchants' houses along the waterfront are a reminder of past prosperity. Macau is named after the Ma Kuok Temple, dedicated to Ah Ma, the Chinese god of fishermen. The Chinese lion, symbol of strength, acts as a guardian of this age-old temple, which still draws devout believers. In the 17th century, Portuguese missionaries brought Japanese Christians over to Macau to build the St. Paul Cathedral. After a fire in the 19th century, only the facade remains. No one has since bothered to rebuild the cathedral. Policemen, recruited in Portugal at the time, kept law and order over the 250,000 inhabitants without difficulty. A considerable part of the population are the descendants of intermarriages between the early colonizers and the Chinese. The situation has changed drastically. The administrative power over Macau was transferred to the People's Republic of China in 1999. Communist labour unions had already been formed, yet the communist flag was still hoisted next to the nationalist one. And in many houses, Chiang Kai-shek's portrait could still be found. Macau served as a stepping stone for many refugees from China to reach Hong Kong. Local industries were primitive. Rope making was a popular trade, the manufacture of joss sticks another. But most important was the firecracker industry. Thousands of children and adults engaged in rolling shells, filling powder, and inserting fuses without any safeguards. These refugees have been fortunate to have obtained a visa to travel by ferry to Hong Kong. Others were being smuggled by sailing junks under the eyes of the communist gunboats patrolling the harbour. Their first impression of Hong Kong was that of contrast, the age-old sampan and the modern Star Ferry connecting the city of Victoria on the island with Kowloon on the mainland. The city of Hong Kong is a strange mixture of East and West. The British merchants who transferred their trade from Macau to Hong Kong in days past had well foreseen the potential of the impressive natural harbour. At one time, it was the greatest merchant port of the Far East. Annually, 10,000 ocean-going vessels entered and cleared the port. More than 7 million tons of cargo was handled per year. Back in the 50s, this was still a primitive process, since manpower was still cheaper than machines at the time. The majority of the cargo was food, pigs and ducks from mainland China. The products were sold at the innumerable markets in the narrow sloping streets. The Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank was the tallest building 50 years ago. In competition, the Bank of China constructed an even higher building. They had to put up with demonstrations, like these of factory workers protesting against a measure of the bank that would put them out of work. The police kept an eye on them, but did not interfere. In the court building nearby, the rights of the citizens were safeguarded. On the same square was the Hong Kong Club for the Upper Class. Here the governor, Sir Robert Black, mounts his Rolls-Royce. A similar traditional stronghold of these times was the cricket club nearby, occupying the most precious piece of land in the heart of the colony. They gave that up as well in the building boom of later decades, demolishing one historic landmark after another. Kowloon was at one time a peaceful, rather quiet place. Here, Nathan Road has since been converted to a crowded shopping alley. At one time, jewellery stores did a brisk business there. Money is on everybody's lips. It can even be sent to the ancestors in the form of hell banknotes by burning it in the incinerator of a temple. Clothes and even houses, complete with furniture, can also be dispatched to the hereafter this way. Children played for money. At a street peddler, they could gamble for sweets. Nowadays, they have more sophisticated tastes. Their fathers and mothers play mahjong, sometimes day and night. For those refugees strong enough, there was always a place in one of the many primitive home industries, earning about $1.50 US per month at the time. Plastic flowers were a much wanted export. These industries have since disappeared. The hills were covered by squatter shacks, overlooking the modern flats and sumptuous villas. The squatters have gone now, and the hills are covered by buildings of every kind. The occupants are businessmen, officials and technicians who have succeeded in material life. For their water supply, the refugees came down from the hills to carry back one bucket after another. Water was rationed in Hong Kong, often to a few hours per day, since there was a chronic shortage of rainwater to cover the needs of millions. So little space is available in Hong Kong that squatters often resort to building their huts against the houses, in spite of the danger of being chased away by the police. Others have rented a balcony on an inner court, a luxury as compared to those living pigged together with 10 to 20 families in one damp cellar. An estimated 600,000 refugees lived together in the many squatter villages. They built their shacks from everything they could lay their hands on. The villages were easy prey for fire. In 1954, on Christmas Eve, 60,000 people were rendered homeless after the biggest fire recorded. They had lost all they had worked so hard for. Reduced to poverty, the victims searched even in the ashes for valuables. More than 86 charitable institutions brought relief to the victims. But hunger was not the main problem. It was, and remains, insufficient living space. Therefore, following the big fire, the Hong Kong government began constructing resettlement estates. Soon, 500,000 people lived together in government-financed housing, most of them in these tenements. These buildings were finished at the rate of 1 every 9 days. In each block lived 2,500 people. On each floor were 64 cubicles inhabited by 5 persons, or more, as 2 children are counted as 1 adult. Some inhabitants show visible signs of their upbringing. This woman, with her bound feet, obviously came from a family of high social rank. Another relic of the past was the letter writer, who served the illiterates. Children seldom stay home. They would rather escape their dreary surroundings out into the streets, their big playground. Like other children, they are fond of comic books. Their fantastic stories transport them into a dream world, far away from the present. Parents save every penny to send their children well dressed to school and to give them some money to buy a snack on their way. Schools were completed at a rate of 1 every 4 days. Since only 10% of the pupils got free education, many of the poor were still excluded. Education is in Cantonese. Mastery of the many Chinese characters is one of the main subjects. Hong Kong is half land, half water. More than 100,000 people spend their entire lives afloat. Their wooden crafts jostle in the crowded bays, composing small floating villages. There they are born, marry and die. Their customs and traditions have remained unchanged for generations. Like their ancestors, they worship Tin Hao, Queen of Heaven, and the Taoist guardian deity of seafarers and fisherfolk. Some of them are converted to Christianity by the missionaries who live on gospel boats. There, Christian fishermen are married, an occasion that attracts hundreds of spectators. After the ceremony, the couple retires to their boat, their home to be for many years. The bride has changed to a typical Chinese wedding dress, and the celebration will now be conducted according to the old customs. In the gospel boat, the couple bows in respect to their families. The bridegroom then serves titbits to the family as a token of respect, whilst the bride waits obediently. Theirs will be a life of hard work and little leisure. Early next morning, junks set sail for the fishing grounds. Junks go fishing in pairs. In between them, a net is being hauled. The proceeds of the catch are divided afterwards. The fishing fleet of Hong Kong is one of the biggest in the world, with an estimated 10,000 junks. Nowadays, most of them are motorized. The junks were all built in Hong Kong, usually with borrowed money from the government fish marketing organization. Not a minute is wasted aboard the junks. The whole family helps to clean the ship and nets in clean and good condition. Most of the boat people living on junks are Cantonese and are called tanka. Meanwhile, the women are preparing a meal from yesterday's catch. Boat people are superstitious. If chopsticks are dropped accidentally, someone must say a lucky word quickly to ward off danger. According to ancient custom, women and children eat separately from the men. Much of the fish caught is unfamiliar in the West. Grouper is the most popular, but other more common varieties, such as scad, golden thread, golden sardine, and croaker, make excellent eating. When one of the women falls overboard, there is great excitement, since few of them can swim. Towards the end of the day, the nets are hoisted aboard. The catch has been taken out by a small boat. Amongst it is a small shark. They are in great demand for the Chinese delicacy, shark fin soup. This catch was small. Maybe another day will bring more luck. When the fishermen return home, a Thanksgiving ceremony is performed in a Buddhist temple in Hong Kong. In her blissful slumber, she is unaware of the hardships to come. Industrious and enterprising, her countrymen have built themselves a new future. "3 million souls driven together by fate on a tiny piece of land." Unaware of the drastic changes and growth Hong Kong would undergo in the decades to come.